Haven't done this one in Nicholas. Wow, Jesus Christ! I haven't done this one in a while, Nicholas. What is a cow's favorite piece of furniture?
Well, something begins with a moo. I don't know. I don't have anything for you.
Because there's so many pieces of furniture that have moo in them. The couch.
Oh, I really overthought that one. Oh, that's
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of all ages, the Dork Shared Gooniverse and Geeks Worldwide Radio proudly present to you the greatest podcasting team in the world. He's the Fry Guy, Nick Friar. I'm the Backcracker, Dr. Joe. Together we are the TLDR Comic Book Club, baby. Nicholas, how was your Thanksgiving?
My Thanksgiving was great, but I'd be doing a lot better if Twitter wasn't being a pain in the ass right now. And it's not for the same reasons that everybody else is talking about. For some reason, the stream is not showing up on Twitter at the moment.
Oh,
So for
Jesus.
those who typically watch us on Twitter, I apologize. For those who watch us on Twitch and on YouTube, you got nothing to worry about. And if you listen to us in audio form, of course, that is the superior way to catch us because that is the only way you're going to catch any of our Friar Side chats. Make sure you subscribe to the show over there if you haven't already. Leave a 5-star rating and review, please. If you do anything below 5, Joe's going to come find you, and you're going to have some problems. He knows how to crack backs in the Bane kind of way, too.
I'm at the right height to punch you in the nuts.
Yes, but yes, there's that too. But my Thanksgiving was great. Got a lot of reading in. Also read the book that I'm talking about today because I had started reading this a while back when it came out, and then issues happened or whatever because it's IDW. But we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But talked about that, and there's so much for what's new this week, Joe. Like you and I both needed the extended weekend to get some extra reading in.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you what, Nicholas. I my iPad shit the bed over the summer. And so I've been, like a pleb, reading off my phone or reading off my PC. And reading off my PC is not really conducive because it's down in the basement. So, like I do a lot of my reading at night when I'm sitting on the couch or when I'm laying in bed. Doing that on the phone is fucking brutal. And so, I think part of the reason why I've been looking at my my numbers for last year, I read close to 1,000 comic books. I'm not even at 700 yet. And I think that's for two reasons. One, I've fallen behind on my reading, and I think that's a big part because I haven't had the iPad to read on, the convenience of that. And two, we haven't had a lot of mainline issues this year. And so, like with mainline issues, like we either have books, okay, we've read, we've got them queued up, ready to go, or some weeks like, here's a book I've been wanting to read. Let me give it a go. And then you read it and you fly through volumes 1, 2, however many there might be. Like Saga, for instance, I flew through all, however many, volumes there were at the time. And so got a new iPad over the weekend. It was time.
Nice.
And so did a ton of reading, a little bit of catching up, but a lot of reading for the topic du jour. To borrow a phrase from another podcast.
Never heard of it. Wouldn't know what podcast that was from. But but I'll tell you what, man. So when I read Reckless, like that was one where like I'll read it. I've been wanting to read it, and finally I got some time, whatever. And I went and read it, and I crushed that first volume, and then I kept going through it, and I got a very, very similar vibe from you talking about the book that you're talking about today. I cannot wait to hear more details about this thing because I know you're so excited to talk about it.
I can't wait. And so we were a little peek behind the curtain. Our annual is coming up. And I was discussing some of the categories and usually we do book of the year. What's our series of the year. And we've kind of set parameters for this. Like, I think October of the year prior is sort of like as far back as we'll go, because then usually it's only like 3 issues into the past year. But I was thinking, because of the book that I read that I'll be talking about today, I was like, we should have a new comic book category that's book of the year and an ongoing series. Sorry for whistling there with my S. That should be comic book of the year as well, because there are a lot of ongoing series that we couldn't put up for consideration because they didn't technically come out in this past year. So this book is that good that I want to give it an award. And so I'll make up an entire fucking category.
Oh, that's what it is. Oh my God, you're ridiculous. Well, I'm gonna have to give this a look more then if that's gonna end up. No, we both have our nominees and we go from there. But I'm excited. Oh, that was caught on air. So there you go, everybody.
I hit the mute and it didn't mute.
I tell you what, right now I'm not gonna lie to you guys and tell you I'm gonna fix it in post. I'm just gonna leave it there. It's just how it goes.
I just Belichicked all into everyone's fucking ears.
Oh God, are you talking about how you vomited on the football field because you don't know how to coach a team anymore? Is that what you meant? That's oddly specific, Joe. Most people aren't going to understand that reference. Huh. Anyways, let's do some. You're speaking of catching up, right? Obviously, talking about a book that's. I mean, we'll get to your actual book in a bit, but catching up, we both did a little bit of it over Thanksgiving break. What were the books that you wanted to highlight, real quick?
So 2 books right off the bat I wanted to read once I got the new iPad brag. Ghost Rider 8 and Wolverine 27, both by friend of the show Benjamin Percy. Excellent. It had been a little, so Wolverine 27 came out a little bit. I forgot how issue 26 ended. And so when I picked up issue 27, I was, so good. Percy's killing both these books, and then the conclusion to Scott Snyder's and Hayden Sherman's
look at
Dark
you.
Spaces Wildfire issue 5. That was a great series, wrapped up. Very satisfying conclusion to that. I'll probably talk about that on the show at some point.
Nice. I'll say this. I am behind on Wolverine right now too. I believe I'm 2 issues behind. Yes, good job muting the mic. I'm proud of you. I have been on top of Ghost Rider though, and that has been top notch. For me, I had to catch up on DC versus Vampires. Issue 11 came out last week. I read that out when it came out on New Comic Book Day. We had some issues with the review copies, which is why I wasn't able to talk about it on the show last week. And then I caught up on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 101, 102. So I am up to speed right now on Melissa Flores' run, friend of the show. Very excited to see what she does with the property moving forward. Obviously, she's been around for a long time. You can hear a little bit about her history with that in our conversation we had a while back on The Dead Lucky, which is out this week. And I'd say now is a good time as any to transition into what's new, Joe. But we're going to hold off on Image right now. And why don't you take us through Marvel?
All right. So I'm going to rattle off a whole bunch of books, only one of which I'm reading, and I didn't get a chance to, unfortunately. But Darth Vader 29. And then here comes the daunting list. We have Strange number 8, Exterminators number 3, Captain America Symbol of Truth issue 7, Planet Hulk Worldbreaker number 1. I do actually want to read that.
Yes.
Strange Academy Finals issue 2, Avengers Assemble Alpha. This is something that's been driving me nuts, Nicholas. There's grinding dog skiers here. Marvel does this with the alphas and the omegas, right? And the Come on. What are you doing here?
There's only one alpha and omega, and that's the TLDR Comic Book Club.
Damn right, baby. So Avengers Assemble Alpha number 1. Peter Parker and Miles Morales, Spider-Man Double Trouble number 1. Again, get the fuck out of here with the length of that GD title. Are you kidding me?
Is it for kids?
Yes,
okay,
it is. But it's like 1,000 words long. Like, come on. Come on. Just call it Spider-Man Double Trouble. You'll figure it out. The kids are not stupid. They will fucking figure it out when they open up the page and they look at it and they see Peter Parker and they see Miles Morales. Spider-Man Double Trouble number 1. Boom. Jesus.
I think I need Swaggins' input on this. Why don't you buy that book for her? How's that sound? Let's see what she has to say. Okay. Well, as much as you don't like long titles, I also think you're not a huge fan of annuals. In DC, we got a ton of those this week. Right. Of course, we're both reading Nightwing, Detective Comics. You're reading Batgirls. All those annuals are out this week. Justice Society of America issue 1 is out this week. It's like a part 1 of I don't know what the series is going on exactly, but Brian Villar over at Geeks Worldwide actually gave us a 10 out of 10 reviewing this week. So might be something we need to take a look at. Superman, Kal-El returns special. I imagine you're going to want to take a look at that at some point. But a lot of these are like specials, so not something you necessarily we're going to be reviewing because there's only so much you can dig into. It's just more of a celebration, whatever. Blue Beetle graduation day. Grifter got run over by a reindeer, issue 1. Wildstorm 30th anniversary. Special issue 1. I'll probably be giving that one a look. Nubia and the Justice League special issue 1. So again, a lot of specials, stuff that's interesting to read, but not necessarily something we're going to want to break down here. But from Boom this week, there are a couple books we want to talk about.
Yes. Oh man. So this was like Boom and Image really, really slayed it this week with their titles. So we have Friar issue 2. We have Magic, Nahiri, the Lithromancer #1, which I kind of want to give a go. I mean, it's #1, have to, but
I
think typically read the Magic titles more than I do.
Yeah, I did read Magic for a while, and then I just kind of fell off because it was good, but it's just like I think there was just too much other better stuff, and I don't have like this tie to Magic like most other people do.
Right.
As much as I always found that world kind of interesting. I'm just not a card game guy, so it's like a one-off from it probably.
Yeah, so that's one I want to check out. Dead Mall issue 2. I didn't get a chance to read this week, but I did read
That's
issue
Dark
1.
Horse, bro.
Oh Jesus Christ! What am I doing?
Top to bottom, left to right.
Yeah. Well, I've been reading all this manga, right? So it's
there you go.
So sorry, Orcs: The Curse #4, and then there's 2 books this week that each of us want to discuss. I just want it out there. Credit to me for not reading Damn Them All #2. I was at Newbury Comics last week. I guess they reprinted issue 1, which is a good sign for the series when you're seeing reprints already.
100%.
This is written by Cy Spurrier, so I grabbed it and I go, how did I miss this? And I got home and I was excited, and I sexted you about it. And you said, that's old, bro. That's been out. And I go, oh shit, must be a reprint. So I didn't read it. Because you had called dibs. So credit to me for not reading that and not reading issue 2.
Credit to you for not briaring me again, because taking credit, you're stealing stuff on me, taking credit for stuff left and right. It's
I didn't read Briar issue 2. I only read the first issue, so you're fine. You're fine.
Yes. But I'll tell you what, when Damn Them All, the first arc ends, I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to be talking about that right away on this show. Second issue, another banger. Again, if you're a fan of Constantine, if you like Cy Spurrier's Constantine run, which I really liked a lot too, I highly recommend you picking this up. Don't wait for me to talk about it on the show at greater length. The aesthetic on this also feels very like Constantine-like. And look, this is its own thing. Don't get me wrong, but still, I can't help but think of that with this character. Charlie Adlard is the artist on this series, and of course, Cy has, who we had on the show a while back, has experience with Constantine, and it is in some ways it is like a female Constantine, but also, as I mentioned to you, you have that New Burnish kind of thing where he's like where this character works for organized crime, and to me too. So Joe, there's a cop who got involved, who came into the mix in the first issue, and she's very much there in the second one, and you learn a bit about her history, and like the intro to her, like how we get to know her background a little bit more is mind-blowing. Like I'm stunned that they how they approach this in the comic, and it's just like a thing that is very much of the moment. And I'll talk about it more in detail when I do the trade. As much as in the second issue, I don't mind sharing that one with you. But it's even then, I don't want to spoil it for you. But it's a lot, and I was blown away by how they did it, and I thought it was really interesting and really well done. And that's just like the first, I don't know, maybe 4 pages. And that was what really stuck with me. But the rest of it's just like, you got like the rest of it's awesome too. But that was just like, whoa, like really sucked you right back in.
I mean, we love Boom, right? I mean, from the start of this, from when we started doing this podcast, I told you about Boom, and we came up with a rule. And so, but Boom, it still is as good as they are. They're still not Image, right? Like when it comes to indie labels, like Image is the king, and then it's everyone else, right?
Yep.
And so, like, you'll see a lot of times second printings from Marvel, from DC. It's commonplace,
sure,
right? And even Image. So I think for a Boom book to get a second printing so quickly of the first issue, when the second issue, before the second issue even drops, that is, I can't state how big that is. That means the numbers were so good, the demand for it was so high. They said, we got to get this back out there quickly. So I can't wait for you to talk about this book, and so that I can read it, because big fan of Cy Spurrier. This sounds right in my wheelhouse. And that's a big deal. Like, I remember that you got that with Something Is Killing the Children, and you got that with Once and Future. right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And those we know how those titles, went on. So if there's any indicator of how good this book is, that's it, right there. And then I guess you talking about it has some pull. But
yeah.
The other book, I want to discuss is from Boom that came out this week is The Approach. So I love the first issue. And it took a little bit for this first issue to get going. I think I talked about that when I first talked about it, but it was the end, right? Did its job. Talk about this all the time. What's the key to a first issue? Pull you in, sink its teeth into you, get you wanting to that second issue. So the second issue picks right up, where the first issue left off, and it didn't take its foot off the gas. Like I talked about, there was that horror element, right at the end, at the first issue, and it continued all the way through. So we're dealing with some really cool, gory stuff here. We're getting some depth to some characters that I'm enjoying, and this has the makings for a potential TLDR book, just fun horror. Where is this going to go kind of thing. So I really enjoyed the second issue.
Man, when I saw the cover for the main cover for the first issue of this, I was like, this looks good. And I feel like Joe's going to call dibs on this. And because I'd called dibs on Briar. I already called dibs on Damn Them All. I knew Damn Them All was going to be awesome. And I had a feeling Briar was going to be too. But so when I saw that one, I was like, I'll let Joe dabble in that one and see what happens. Cause like, well, you've egged me on enough. Like, this is what happens. Like, I'm going to start going for the throat.
But anyways, you learned,
but I'm really glad to hear that you've liked it so far. So yeah, Boom. Like, you're right that like Image is still king when you're looking at the indie label, and obviously Dark Horse has been around forever. But Boom has, like, on top of like the original stuff too, like Power Rangers has been a huge one for them as well. I mean, they've done an outstanding job, and as much as that you have a loyal fan base there, like you still got to do a good job, and it's still like a much older audience, and you can't have it go and be like what it was, with the show when we were kids. I mean, as an adult, you're not going to have as much patience for that. So they've made a lot of good decisions over there.
And we can't forget too, like, it shouldn't be lost on people. Boom, when Boom first started, they were a completely different company. They were it was very much young adult. I think that was their target audience. And it was right around the time of Something Is Killing Children, Once and Future, that tone shifted. And they started doing, sort of upping their game a bit. And they've been as good as it gets. Boom, AWA, Image, Marvel, DC, and then it's like everyone else in my eyes.
No, I think that's pretty fair. And I mean, there's still even tiers to that, and we will probably talk about that more in some capacity when we do our annual a little bit later on in the year, because we do usually give out
that's a good one. Tier the studios over the past year, because that might because in any given year, like, it could shift. Like,
dude, that could be an episode in and of itself. Maybe we I know we don't need to find more reasons to not do mainline episodes, but we're here to have fun and do stuff for the people, and that might be a fun thing we could do annually. But that's a conversation for off the air. So we got Dark Horse this week. I know you mentioned Dead Mall issue 2. You are reading that one. How is that leaning towards TLDR worthy, or still got to prove itself a little bit?
I haven't read the second issue yet.
Okay, gotcha.
I think I'll know after this issue, because I was lukewarm on the first one. So if this one knocks my socks off, this issue is make or break for me, really.
Okay. Then we got Crochet in Hell issue 1, Star Wars: The High Republic Adventures, which is more for kids, issue 1. And then we have a book that I thought was going to be TLDR worthy, still very much is TLDR worthy through 3 issues now. The Roadie, issue 3. This is written by Tim Seeley and drawn by Fran. I believe I'm saying this properly. Galan. But Fran is the writer and the colorer on this. And I'll tell you what, as I was like skimming through this while you were talking about The Approach, I was just reminded of like how with the art, like the colors, it has an interesting texture to it that is kind of, maybe I wonder if Fran's the artist for Lucky Devil. I honestly wouldn't be surprised, because it has a similar aesthetic to it. There are differences for sure, but like whether you're talking about the line work or the colors, it just like has like this like a rough but also glossy feel to it. And it works perfectly for this too, because we're talking about like, you know, angels and demons kind of thing, more so demon stuff, and then it's, you know, got a heavy metal background to the main character and everything. And I just like I'm very excited to talk to you about this more. The big thing for me coming out of this issue was we get a look at the history of the main character a little bit more, and to me, this isn't, I guess, not always the case, but it's just whenever someone's telling a story, whether it's in movie form, comic book form, show, whatever, and you start digging into a character's history, like one of the main characters who you like, you've got this story, it's moving at a fast pace, and then it's like, all right, we're going to provide a little bit of background here on the fly. I feel like that's always risky. I understand it's something that happens quite often, but it's not always done well. And in this issue, it is done, and it is done very well. Like, I flew through this thing. I really, really enjoyed the roadie through the first 3 issues. Talk about it more at some point down the line on here. I gotta imagine this is a limited series, like, you know, something like 6 issues, maybe a maxi series or whatever, 12 issues, something to that degree. But this has been a real, like, I had expectations for this coming in just because of the backdrop and everything, and it has met them every step of the way.
You nailed it, by the way. Frank Galen was the artist on the.
Hey, look at that. So Galen, okay,
yeah. So look at this, right? Who would have thought when we started this show 2+ years ago that Nicholas would be able to be spotting dimes and eating onions with artists, right?
Wow. Okay, that's a backhanded compliment if I ever heard one.
Well, you admittedly, you know, the art wasn't always your, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look at this.
You admitted it on the goddamn show.
The truth comes out, everybody. Look at this.
You've gotten a greater appreciation of the art since doing this show.
Yes, because they're like, Die was a real game changer for me, because there was always like stuff that I liked. Like, it's like, okay, I like this art. This is my kind of art. That's it. Like, that's what I want. Then it's Die was like, Stephanie Hans is obviously a very impressive artist, but it's just, that's not like, when I think of what I really, really like, that's not my style. It's very, and her style is very unique as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like, this fits the story so perfectly, so amazingly, that like, that was the big game changer for me. But I, in general, I think I just like Fran Galen's art style on its own, but it's also like, it is different from.
It is very unique. That was yeah.
God, Lucky Devil's so good. God, did Colin say he's got more planned? Like, he's got it.
I think he did, but I think it was more on like the back burner. You know, if I remember, I have to go back and listen.
I can't believe that, man. That was like honest to God, seriously. Lauren's like, she's reading Vanish right now, and she's read other stuff like loves Vanish, Philadelphia. She's caught up on that. Her favorite.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Her favorite series though was Lucky Devil.
No shit.
Yeah, I was like, this is awesome. You got to give it a look, and that was her favorite. Still is. Like, so need more of it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna rip through a few of these because this was, you know, when I say it was a light week, volume wise, right? We didn't get a ton from a ton of different publishers, but what we got from the few, we got some heavy hitters. So I'm gonna rip through a couple of these real quick. So from IDW, we have Star Trek issue 2. We have Star Trek Lower Decks issue 3 and Godzilla Rivals versus Gigan issue 1. From Dynamite, we have 007 number 4. From Source Point Press, we have Good Boy, the Prodigal Son issue 1. Mm-hmm. So we definitely got to check that out. A Guardian issue 2 and the Argus issue 2. And then these guys, I think there's potential for this studio, but they do a really shit job of getting their shit out there. Like, I've seen, so from Artist Elite Comics, we had 2 books drop last week that I go, what? And one of them was an issue 2. And then this week they have Artist Elite Presents issue 5. I had no idea there was 4 prior. So
I didn't know that the Artist Elite Presents stuff was like actually going to be stories. I thought like the first time it was like, oh, this is it. But they're like, it's an issue, and it's like a bunch of stories like chopped up in the course of it all. So I've been out on it the whole time, like not knowing till like fairly recently what they were doing. So I hope they do a collected edition thing, but it's very confusing.
Yeah, they gotta promote themselves on Twitter more. I mean, we follow their accounts. I don't see anything. You know,
they did a great job on the hype train originally, but now that the stuff's out, it's like, what's going on? Like, I'm very confused.
Yeah, so you know, let's come on, Artist Elite. I want to read your stuff. Make it more accessible. Let me know, you know, let's get that hype train coming. And then Skybound. We have Stillwater issue 16. Friend of the show, Chip Zdarsky, art by Ramon Perez, and I mean, you guys know how much I love this book, and we've got 2 more issues left, so it's ending at issue 18.
Oh boy!
And so this is Stillwater. I think it's been a little bit on Chip's back burner because it's been coming out a little bit. There's been a little bit more time in between issues, but this was such a good issue. And it finally, it was hailed as, the origins of Stillwater's, revealed, right? And it was so good. It was so well written. It was mostly a flashback episode issue, but it really helped sort of bring this story, together. So now we've got 2 issues left. It's going to be all hands on deck. And what's coming. So very, very excellent issue. This has been a tremendous series. I'll be bummed that it's ending, but I will say that I think that it's probably like the right time to do it.
They timed it out well. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. This is one, I think this was one of your original 10 books, if I'm not mistaken, on the show. I could be wrong.
I did Stillwater early on, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it was the original 10. If not, it was the first 20. And I can't believe that it's still like all this time, like later, it's still going on. Because again, it's only at number 16. So okay, then we got ADW. Of course, there's Erratic.
AD what? How do you want to say that again?
Did I say ADW?
Yeah. You want to say that again? Because I'll tell you what, we got a tweet from them. You've officially been ratted out. And they caught that,
What did I do?
From last week when you said you hadn't caught up on Sacrament yet?
Oh no! What, they heard that and they? Oh
yeah,
no!
Yeah, no, I don't play coy. I posted the video earlier, but they noticed. So you want to start that again, Nicholas?
I said okay. First of all, AWA. We got Absolution issue 5, and then Erratic volume 2. Issue 3, and if they listened, I hope they heard that I said I will be ready to talk about Sacrament at full length when the series wraps up with issue 5, which has been an awesome series. You got Rich Keefe on that train, so very happy about that. It's an awesome series.
He loved it. Yeah, I figured it'd be in his wheelhouse. I knew it'd be in your wheelhouse. This is I put this up there with Archangel 8, and this is one of their best.
Rich and I have we have a similar taste, but there's a point where it diverges. I don't quite know because we're both big Red Hood guys. We both like Constantine a lot, but like there's certain Constantine stuff that I like that he doesn't, but who knows? Anyways, then we move over to Image, Joe. And Image had a huge week. Now we have Lovesick issue 2, Plush issue 1. There was a review from our guy Ferg over on Geeks Worldwide for that. 20th Century Men issue 4. Then we have a few books that actually all of the next books we have had at least one of the creators on the show to talk about. I think it's all been writers in all these cases. Flawed issue 3 is out this week. King Spawn issue 17 out this week. Rogue Sun issue 8. Rogue Sun. This is the return of Rogue Sun since the we had the what was the book that?
Oh the Inception book.
The Choose Your Own Adventure that got us in trouble with TikTok. Apparently.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So
absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, because I titled I said something like Doc had the Confundus chart put on his dumbass, and TikTok flagged it for bullying.
Yeah,
I was bullying myself. You fucking morons.
Unbelievable.
So I put in I asked to repealed it, whatever, and like 5 seconds later it says it's been approved, and they put it back up. So you fucking kidding me?
Waste of our friggin' time. They just wanted your attention. That's what it was. Going for the clicks. So stupid. But we're good there. Then we mentioned Rogue Sun and awesome return to the series.
Yes.
But we also got another return of a series. We have another Massiverse book. Also, there's 2 separate things that are both out this week. We both read them. Where do you want to start?
So let's start with the Dead Lucky, and then let's end with Philadelphia. But before we do that, I just want to King Spawn was absolutely tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't underline it to speak about it because we both want to talk about these next 2 books. But it was really fucking good.
It was so good, and I absolutely love the main cover for this issue too. But crazy. Always crazy action. And again, it's like when Javi was away for a bit, and the guy who filled in did a good job. But Man, Javi just does such a good job. I mean, the thing with the big bad and that metal pole, it's like that's some next level like violent shit. I remember looking at it thinking like, did they really just go there? And that's later on in the book. You guys know what I'm talking about when you catch it. But that final issue too, that like that splash that they do, Joe, I love it. Like I know, was it Saga did a ton of was like always splash at the end of every issue. I love the one that we get here. It's so like, oh my fuck, like where's Sean going to take this next? So awesome stuff. But yes, let's start with the Dead Lucky.
Yeah. So, man, we love this series. When we had Melissa Flores on, yeah, it was Melissa Flores to talk about this book. I mean, we got to read it early. We absolutely loved it. And usually Image will send us a couple of books. They just sent us just the one. So getting to read this each month has been an absolute joy. And these next two books, I think, were very cathartic for the writers, because there was heavy emotions that came out in both of these books, especially with this one, because this is a book that deals a lot with PTSD. And we talked to Melissa Flores about that and sort of her experience through her partner.
Yep.
And what she dealt with. And I felt like that we've gotten that through the first few issues, but we really, really got that in this issue. And there was something a bit powerful about it and reading it, and really elevated the character, BB. And you add that on top of just how kick-ass the story is and sort of where it's going. This is setting up again to have a really explosive finale. And I can't wait for it.
Yeah, and the way they end the whole issue too, it's like, oh yeah, it's like when we saw the Dead Lucky introduced in, what was it, Supermassive issue 1, or we're getting Supermassive 2, I think in the spring. But when we saw her introduced, like, oh, this is someone who could possibly be a villain, especially with like her look and everything. And now with what they got going on at the end of this issue, I could very much see like the public perception, and maybe like Radiant Black and Rogue Sun, all the people in this story, I could see them somehow be see the Dead Lucky somehow be painted in a villainous type light with the direction that she's going, even though she's very much a hero. Well, actually, Melissa said to us, BB's a soldier. She's not a hero. She's a soldier. So
yes,
sometimes they can be turned into villains depending on your point of view. But yeah, awesome fourth issue. Absolutely, and you said it too a ton. The character design too, the super design, oh, awesome. But then of the two, so I love Rogue Sun. Rogue Sun is probably my favorite book on the shelves right now. Very excited to have that back after a little pause from Ryan Parrott. But then we also get the return of Philadelphia, and I said after the fourth arc that was the best arc by far. Like Philadelphia was already an awesome must-read horror comic for anybody who likes horror, but to me like Rodney elevated his game. Like Jason Shawn Alexander had already been like, it was great and doing awesome, and he did elevate his game too. But for me, I felt like Rodney like was in fifth gear the whole time and shifted it into sixth gear. Like when you look at them comparatively, we get to Philadelphia 25, and instantly it's like shit's already crazy with Anansi and what he's dealing with. And then some of the imagery like that we get, like I think it's like the fifth page or something like that with Papa Sangster, or the third and fifth page, I think it is. It's like crazy action. And actually, I think that the line art was not Jason Shawn Alexander. He did the layouts in the inks, but it was Herman.
I'll get to that, and I'll get to that in a second. Yeah.
Okay. But so that was crazy. But then just what happens by the end of the issue? Again, like I hate when we do this, but there's a huge development in this story that we don't like. How is it going to affect the course of the rest of the title moving forward?
Right. And the last few issues of Nita Haas we've talked about, it's sort of dipping its toes a little bit further like into Philadelphia. And we get that. We see now like how those streams are crossing. Like I said, with Dead Lucky, this seemed like a very cathartic issue for Rodney Barnes. There's been a lot. There's been that father-son dynamic throughout this series, but it really comes to an emotional head here in this issue. And it was again, it was powerful. There was a lot of powerful emotional stuff in this issue, and then you add the art and all the fucking wildness that's going on, around it. Like, this was an A plus, 10 out of 10, 6 stones, 8 pineapple, kind of episode.
Yeah, I'm just
but
thinking
like,
that you're. Go ahead.
Oh, so what I was gonna say, about the art. So the art, was by Hermain, or German. I'll pronounce this Hermain Ermosupe.
Yep.
And so at the end of the issue, Jason Sean Alexander, wrote a note about the art. And he's like, I've been really busy on projects this and this. Louis, has is it Louis?
Yeah,
CT or whatever it is that Fernino has been really busy. He's been taking a little step back, so he brought he brought the they brought in German Masupe, and he just went on and on and on about how beautiful his art is, and you see it here. Like, it very much is that vibe that is the Philadelphia verse. But one of the things he said wasn't art related. He said, if you thought the last arc was crazy, wait until you see what Rodney has in store, not just for this one, but the next one. Holy shit, where the fuck is this series going, baby? I think it's about time we get Rodney back,
Yeah.
And then we try and weasel some advanced copies off him.
Oh, wow, look at you. Yeah, why not?
But seriously,
it's worked before. Yeah, no, I think I do think it's worth it. I mean, we do tend to have him on once a year, and I feel like we have to. Like, I mean, I don't know if he's going to be adding more titles to what he's doing. I know he has a few other things planned for Philadelphia, and he's doing some stuff on the Substack and everything. But I mean, like, it's worth checking in, because as you're going through this, I'm, like, you're talking about one facet of what goes on in this issue, and obviously it's very important. And obviously last arc, we had some major players thrown into the mix, and there's so many important characters in this now, characters we care about and invested in. And I'm just like, I don't like, they could really take their time and do stuff with each character and bounce around in different ways from arc to arc, issue to issue. I feel like, I don't think saying 100 is like a fair expectation on anybody, even though Rodney is now, a quarter of the way there. But I mean, I don't see a ceiling on the length of how long this title can go.
I mean, eventually the war that's going on does have to come to an end.
Right.
But it's then, what then does he end it there? Is that the end? Or do we go beyond? Is there more? And my hope is that there is more, because I feel like the end of the war is coming, like this arc coming, and I'm pretty sure he said there's more beyond. So let's fucking hope. Now, when we reach out to Rodney again, we don't typically have more than one guest on, but I would love to have Jason Sean Alexander on as well. And have those two just talking about working together. 25 issues, that's 2+ years.
Yeah.
Right?
They've been
so that's a
lot.
long time. And then it's probably, it's probably closer to 3 years, that they've been working on this together. And so, plus with Anita Hawes and all that stuff. So I'd love to have the both of them on.
Yeah, and Jason Sean Alexander, of course, did a lot of Spawn stuff, and he's working on Empty Zone, which is a title that you can read on Hoopla right now. I think he's working on his 3rd volume for that, and that started, I think, back in 2015. I remember giving that a look a while back. Maybe I'll have to go back and circle back on that one and see if that's a TLDR worthy book. But yeah, awesome stuff. Excited to see what he does with that. But I he will be missed. But at the same time, Herman does some awesome work. This was a great introduction, and the image that we see accompanying Jason's letter at the end. That's the image. Like, when I think of this issue, that's the one. Despite everything that happens later on, that's the one that's going to stand out most. And there's a lot of awesome artwork throughout the course of Philadelphia 25, and another kick-ass cover too. By the way. Oh my God. But I think the cover for Volume 4, which you see at the end of this issue, that is the best cover of the series so far. That's Toussaint. That guy's such a badass. Yeah. Motherfucker now, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
He is motherfucker.
Yeah. But anyways, that is enough about the comics that are coming out this week. Joe, you do have an image book, though, that you want to talk about at length Honestly, I feel like you could do it for an hour, but tell the people what you're ready to tell me about.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to keep this brief. But I teased it earlier in the week on Twitter at TLDR_pod. That Texas Blood from Image Comics. And this is probably like the first time in a long time we've had back-to-back mainline issues.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to picking mainline issues, at least I think I could speak safely for you as well. Like, there's a lot of times where we've been reading an ongoing series of like, this is really good. Okay, as soon as the first arc is done,
Yep.
I'm going to talk about it on the show. And then there's other times where it's like, ooh, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so I started scrolling through my list.
We're reading a million things. It's like, I have no book to talk about. It's so frustrating. Right. That's why I said we got to create those lists.
Right. So when it came to picking this week's book, I said, I'm going to give that Texas Blood a shot because it's been on my queue for a very long time. This book is now 19 issues deep. So it's, puts it at year and a half, close to 2 years, depending on little breaks in between, arcs and stuff like that. And I remember when it first came out, I think it debuted around the same time as Maniac of New York. And so for some reason, I had both those books in my head as pure horror books, right? Maniac in New York definitely is. And so I was going in thinking that Texas Blood was some sort of horror book, either a vampire book or something like that. And so I was very, very pleasantly surprised. I would have been pleasantly surprised if it was a horror book. But before I dive into it, written by Chris Condon, art and colors by Jacob Phillips. That is a name that is very familiar on the show, whether it is he or I believe Sean Phillips is his father. Right?
That is correct. Yep.
Who we've talked about, on the show before, and especially when we've both talked about Reckless and Jacob Phillips, or Sean Phillips, did
Jacob
Reckless.
Phillips is on some of that too. He's a colorist.
Yes, and Jacob Phillips is also the artist for Newburn. Right. So when you see Jacob Phillips or Sean Phillips there, you know what type of book you're getting. So quick synopsis. Quality. Right. Sheriff Joe Bob Coates questions his effectiveness as the aging lawman of Ambrose County, Texas, as chaos descends following an explosive highway confrontation and the mysterious death of a local rogue, Travis Terrell.
Wait a minute. Joe Bob Coates? That's
Joe
amazing.
Bob. Joe Bob. Right. Joe Bob.
Any relation to Ben Coates?
Yeah. Well, unless they had, unless they were brothers from another mother,
okay.
Yeah. Anyways. Joe Bob. So, 19 issues, as I mentioned a few moments ago. Right now, there's 2 volumes out, but the third volume will be dropping in January, plus a Christmas special, which seems odd, but it is fucking fantastic. So, what I'm going to do something a little different when I'm breaking down this book is I'm going to kind of talk about the arcs. I'm not going to go into details. I'm going to go into sort of general themes and sort of what I loved about each of them. Because I'll tell you what, I read all 19 issues in less than 2 days. I fucking flew through this, and it was so good. Like I said, like I thought it was a horror book going into it, and no, it is a Western crime story. Right. And so, like I said, when you see the name Phillips, whether it's Sean or Jacob, you're getting a crime story, right? Whether it's Reckless, where you're getting sort of that pulp crime, sort of LA Confidential, Maltese Falcon type story, or you with Newburn, where you're getting that New York mafioso type crime story. Here we're getting a Western crime, and I use the term Western loosely because when you categorize something as Western, there's a certain connotation that goes with, like Redemption, for example. That's a sci-fi Western comedy. That very much has a Western feel to it, like its theme, everything about it, its setting. This is more Western in its setting, right? And and it's just a good crime story, and each arc is distinctly different from each one, as it should be, but in terms of how the story is told, what type of crime is going on, and it's paced so perfectly. the layer of the storytelling. This is the first thing I've ever read from Chris Condon, and it's absolutely fantastic. And what whenever you see the trades, there's always the blurbs, right? Zdarsky does a blurb on this, and he says, something to the effect of the talent of Chris Condon and Jacob Phillips as new budding creators in this industry is astronomical, right? And he couldn't be any more. I butchered it, but it's essentially that's what he's saying, right?
Okay.
And it's so well written and it's so well drawn. Like Ryan Felipe. They have such a very distinct way of drawing and coloring. It has that classic noir crime feel to it. So when you pick up one of their books, you know what you're getting, right? You know visually what you're going to get. You're going to get tremendous art. You're going to get tremendous detail. And one of the things I loved about Philip's art in this is, again, facial expressions, right? A good artist can tell you a story without there being words, and can capture emotion without you being directed on how to feel, whether it be through narration or a thought bubble or whatever. And when talking about Joe Bob, and I'll get into this in a few moments, is that he's a very Jim Gordon-esque type character. He doesn't have the same flaws that Jim Gordon does, but he carries the same guilt with him. And you see that on his face, his facial expressions, through different mannerisms and actions that Phillips is able to draw. So that right there, is A+ stuff. And so what I loved about this, when I picked it up, the first issue is a bit of a standalone issue. When I read it, I initially got the thought that, okay, this is going to be sort of an anthology type series. Each issue is going to maybe revolve around a different case, because the first one was like buttoned up, tight, tied in a bow. But it was a great way to introduce readers to this little world that they live in, Ambrose, County, Texas. A great introduction to who Sheriff Joe Bob Coates is, right? And it really sort of, I know, it really does feel just like a day in the life. Like you're reading this book, and it's just a day in the life of Sheriff Joe Bob and the shit that he's going to deal with in this redneck country bumpkin town, right? But what this story, I'm going to talk a lot about. I'm going to go into detail about this first issue, just because I think there's a lot to it. It's important, because then issues 2 through 5 really compose the first arc. So this, like I said, this first issue is a bit of a standalone issue, and what's great about it is its simplicity, because all it is, it revolves around you get introduced to the sheriff. He's doing sheriff things. He's showing up at the office, grabbing his coffee and a donut, talking to the deputies. And before he steps out of the door, though, his old lady's giving him hell. It's his birthday. It's his 70th birthday, and she needs her fucking casserole dish. And she's on him all goddamn day about getting this casserole dish that they had lent out to so-and-so, at a dinner party way back when. And so he's going about his day. Okay, so he moseys on, to the woman's house who has the casserole dish, knocks on the door, and a man answers. Presumably, it's either this woman's husband or special man friend or whatever, and won't open the door. And he said, "Oh yeah, so and so can't come. We're busy. We're in the middle of something. Can you come back later?" He's like, "Well, I really need my my casserole dish. My old lady's up my ass about it. She needs it for dinner tonight." And then you hear, and he asks for, the woman, and she's, "Oh no, I'm fine. It's really dirty. I'll send so and so over to your house to drop it off later." Okay, so we've kind of seen this trope before, right? Like sheriff, policeman shows up at someone's door. They know them. They refuse to answer. Something doesn't feel right. And as he's walking back to his car, he sees an empty beer can. So you get the sense, okay, there's this guy's a drunk, and he's probably, tuned his wife up, right? So again, just a day in life. He's okay. All right. If you need anything, call. So then, like, again, it's just a day in the life. He shows up at a general store to, pick up a pack of smokes or beef jerky or whatever the hell it may be. And he's talking with the guy behind the counter, because of course everyone knows everyone. And they start talking about this, this couple, and the guy's like, "Yeah, he's been drinking again." And you start to see that worry on Joe Bob's face, like, fuck, I got to go back there. Something's not here. My gut's telling me something's not right. I got to get back there. And as he's racing to go, or as he's driving to go back to the house to check in on him, this truck flies by him on the road. So he turns around, pulls the guy over. It's the guy he had just been talking to at the house. And he's covered in blood. And he goes, I'm sorry. And he puts the gun to his head, blows his brains out.
Oh, shit.
And then sitting next to him is the fucking casserole dish. So you know exactly what just happened.
Oh,
right?
My God.
And like that just blew me away because there was so much that happened, not just visually, right? And that's not a spoiler. That's the first issue. That's just like sort of the introduction.
We'll let the people decide if it's a spoiler
right?
Or not.
Well, the second, well, you just trust me on this.
I'm kidding.
I went into that layer of detail because like this is something that you see coming, but it still hits you like a ton of bricks, both visually as you're seeing it, but also reading it. But it's the stuff that happens between panels and between the pages, because something's not right, and that's not going to end up well. But you still kind of think like, okay, is something going to happen at the party later on in the day or something like that? And then what this does too is that it sort of establishes the character of Joe Bob, right? Because he's a guy who he's got good intentions, and he knew something wasn't right. And it's like the gut punch, the guilt that he carries with him now is like, I should have acted sooner. Like we can all relate to that. There's been moments in our lives where something didn't feel right. We should have acted sooner and we didn't, and something right.
Yeah.
And like, can you imagine like, fuck, that's a heavy thing. Yeah. And then as the series goes on throughout the different arcs, there's different moments in Joe Bob's life where there's these things happen where like, he goes to do the right thing and it doesn't go the way that he should, or he should have done something that he didn't. And it's this guilt that he carries around with him his entire life. And so that's the first issue. The issues 2 through 6, like I said, really take on more of a traditional arc, and it revolves around, a character, who him and his brother grew up in the town. They were both fucking pricks and dickheads, but he decides I'm going to change my life. I'm going to move out of town. He does. But he has to come back because his brother dies. And then everything that revolves around that and how that story comes to a close, it's so good. And then and then issues 7 through 12 comprise the second arc, which revolves around a missing child. And what's great about this arc is, again, it's told in a much different way. Whereas, the first 6 issues is more present day Joe Bob. The second arc is him sitting down with a new deputy at a diner, having a cup of coffee, and he needs to get, he's been going over this case that has been sort of plagued him for decades, and it's eating at him. So he just needs someone to talk to. And in doing so, he's recounting that old case, and so that's a crime that happens, 20 years earlier or whatever, and how he's carried the guilt, and you see why, and how that unfolds. It's so good. And then we get this issue 13. It's just a Christmas issue. And you're like, what? And it's basically, again, it's a flashback. Joe Bob is not sheriff yet. The old sheriff is having people over for a Christmas party, and he's just recounting a story of the previous sheriff, and how he was batshit crazy and the crime that happened with him. And like, you're all in, and it's just a sort of a standalone thing. And then the third arc that wrapped up a month or two ago, I sent you a screenshot of this. I sent you a screenshot to Keith as well.
Oh yeah,
of the panel, right? So,
dude, Lauren was right next to me, and she goes, "Nope."
Yeah. So, so like up until this point, it's a crime story, and it still is. But this volume was, because when you're dealing with serial killers, there's always that element of horror. The killer stalking his victims, the seditious nature to it all, right? The brutality of it. And so this was like an issue. Like, fuck, I shouldn't be reading this at night, but I have no choice because I'm already all in, and it literally kept me up at night. And it was so good. And I think, a lot of us have fascinations with serial killers. I know Keith does. My wife does. Like we watch we all documentaries, right? Yeah. And this was so fucking good. And it was so, and the serial killer in this is the RQK killer, the Red Queen killer. And I sent you a still shot. I sent you an additional still that I didn't send Keith.
How you like them apples, Keith?
Well, Keith doesn't like things spoiled, so I didn't want to cross any lines. But like, this was just the way the first victim was posed.
You spoiled something for me though. What?
I didn't spoil it, but I didn't want him to think I didn't want him thinking I was spoiling anything.
Oh my goodness. I'm heartbroken now. And now you're spitting into the microphone again.
Yeah, I'm trying to hit the fucking mute button. I'm dying.
Oh, you're a class act, you know that?
I am. But it was so good. And I mean, I could really just talk to the wall about this book. Anyone who loves crime, anyone who just loves great storytelling, I can't recommend this book enough.
I mean, shit, this is amazing. I mean, I have obviously, we both haven't read each other's, like all of each other's books that we've recommended to one another, because we have to stay on top of everything, because we're always doing what's new, and there's so much stuff, so much quality stuff out there. And then we're trying to read other things too that we've maybe skipped over for the show. But I'll tell you what, man, like this, I haven't read a book you've recommended that I haven't liked. And this might move to the top. This has to move to the top pile for me. This sounds amazing. I'm gonna crush this thing.
And I didn't get into characters too much, because really, like, the main character really is Joe Bob, and it's just this wonderful way of storytelling where it goes between the past and the present, but it does so in like the right way. Tom King, take notes. Where like whenever they're in the past, it's just him storytelling, and the majority of the time is spent there. Right? It's not this constant back and forth nonsense. So it really is brilliant storytelling, and then you add Jacob Phillips's art to it, and it's just an absolute home run.
I'll tell you what, I know this might be a spoiler, but does Joe Bob Coates end up marrying Catwoman in the end or no? But all right, so this sounds like a show, no questions asked for me.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, give me fucking 10 seasons of Joe Bob.
Yeah, this sounds awesome.
This is fantastic.
Sounds so good. Awesome. So definitely gonna be, and this is available on Hoopla, you said? Or did you read on Comixology?
No, I read this through the review copies we get from Image.
Oh, there you go. Well, it'll probably be available on Hoopla. Make sure you guys check that out. If not, maybe on Comixology. If not, this is definitely one worth paying for, it sounds like, over at your local comic book shop. And most of the books we talk about are on here. Now, I'm very excited about that, but I'm also very excited to talk about the book that I have planned today. It's funny, Joe. I didn't double check myself on this, but I'm like 99.5% positive that we haven't done any Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff on this show. I don't count Usagi Yojimbo because he was his own thing. I'm right.
Well, we did The Last Ronin.
Okay, but that, like, we haven't for a mainline episode. We haven't done.
No, we haven't. It is on Hoopla, by the way. That Texas Blood Volumes 1 and 2 is on Hoopla.
All right, there we go. So then go buy the third one in your local comic shop.
I am all. You really should. This is one you want in your collection.
Absolutely. So we haven't done we've done Last Ronin. More than anything, we complain about Last Ronin as much as we did like the series. But then this is a series. Shredder is a character who we all like, right? Everybody has their own turtle that they like a lot. Everybody has a soft spot for Splinter. He's like in my opinion, like a better version, different but better version of Alfred. But then you look at Shredder, and he is to me. I love Mikey, and he was always my favorite as a kid, and Raph is my number 2. But I think Shredder might be my favorite TMNT character, period. And a big part of that is his look. I mean, he is such a badass, and even more so in the comics versus the movies. In the comics, it's closer to the cartoon that we grew up on, but TMNT, Shredder in Hell. When this came out, I was not like on top of my game with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff. I'm still not on top of my game, but I've read some stuff. Obviously, Last Ronin being the biggest one of them all, and absolutely a must read. But Shredder in Hell, when I saw this was a thing, I was like, I gotta check this out. Like, you're putting Shredder at the center of stuff. Yes, we see him at the forefront of a lot of any of the TMNT specials that we get with like Batman or Power Rangers. Sure, he's there. Or anytime in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in general, you're seeing Shredder in the mix. But to have him be the guy, this is all about him. I needed to check it out. And this 5-issue series that came out in 2019 was written by and drawn by Mateus Santaculo. The colors from this are Marcelo Costa, and the letterer is Sean Lee. The synopsis: abandon all hope. The Shredder returns in this brand new mini-series. Oroku Saki's death is just the beginning, and his journey through the depths of the underworld proved to be anything but a divine comedy. How much of Shredder's soul will remain after he's faced the horrors of hell? Now, for those wondering, like, when the hell did Shredder die? At this point, this is around like TMNT 100 range. He's been dead for about issues at this stage, so roughly somewhere in that range. And why are you freaking Joe? Why are you texting me Michelangelo pictures right now? What the fuck's the matter with you?
Because at the end, I was gonna say post it. I was gonna talk about it.
I was worried like something was happening with my microphone or something like that. Serious? Why is Joe texting me in the middle of my raving about Master Shredder?
I wanted to send it to you so we could. It's something I wanted to talk about at the end.
All right, later. Anyways, so this happens. You don't need to read the TMNT mainline to appreciate this, but it absolutely is like a good point to, if you read this, maybe want to read the City at War Part 1, then read this, then City of War Part 2. It kind of ties everything together. You don't need to go all the way back to TMNT issue 50 to pick this up. And I understand, like, because I know that apprehension in general, but I went in as someone who wasn't reading all that stuff, did look at some ancillary things afterwards because of the way things ended. I wanted to know more and read the City of War stuff as well. And there's a lot of important stuff that goes on in that story too. So all around, absolutely something that you if you're a TMNT fan, I think it's a good jumping in place and kind of move forward from there. The characters involved in this, as I mentioned, Shredder is at the center of it all. Splinter is probably number 2 in all this. Then we have Shredder's lover, Kitsune. And then we also have Tang Shen, who is Splinter's lover, too. And I actually forgot to jot down
Kitsune, I believe.
Kitsune is how you say it? Really? Well, my apologies. But there's also with Shredder, he's always had like this great larger purpose, right? He's bent for something more. He's all about power and everything like that. And he is like, and at this is all about him as the Dragon Warrior, because he is like a divine being in a sense. Like he is the dragon incarnate, again, Dragon Warrior. His whole, what he's going through right now in his death, which I don't want to say who's responsible for his death. You'll find out fairly quickly in the pages of this, but I think it's just like something on its own that you kind of want to see, because like it happens, then it gets addressed. Like he asks, like, how did it happen? And then it's like, that's not important. Like we're just going to move past that right now. It's like, oh really? You're going to fucking move past it? That's fucking convenient. It's kind of funny. But anyways, so he's all about his greater purpose and being a force of nature, and he is a force of nature. But what's so interesting about this is Shredder, who I feel like is a character who's been around for ages, and he's always kind of been a big bad, right? Like, yes, he's the opposite of Splinter, and they were friends when they were younger and everything, but he's not someone. I've always liked him, as I said, but like he's like, we talk about villains now, how they have so much greater depth. There's so much more motivation. It can't just be like, I want $1 million and I'm going to take over the world. And I'm not saying Shredder was ever that, but he's not. He's from a different era originally. This adds another layer to him and puts him in a position where now it's like you look at him and it's not. He's not necessarily a trauma victim, but he is someone who, in a lot of ways, hasn't had full choice of his life at all. Throughout the course of things, he may not necessarily feel that way, but that's a journey that he has to go on throughout the course of the story. And I got to be honest, I never would have thought of Shredder necessarily going through that sort of experience, seeing where things end up and seeing the decisions that he makes in the course of it all too. All very interesting, has huge impacts on the TMNT mainline stuff in general. And also, not to get lost in all this, we say at any time I see the writer and the artist are the same creator, I'm always interested in that. And there's definitely an added fluidity to this story because Matteo Santaculo is in charge of both. And I think Marcelo Costa's art, for his colors for Hell 2 are absolutely outstanding. But the action that we get through all this too, it's, with TMNT, I know now it's usually viewed more as a kid's thing, but when you look back at like the old comics, and actually if you just go and watch what is it, The Toys That Made Us, like the TMNT comics, like the old ones were pretty freaking gritty, and this has this has like an impressiveness to the art and everything like that. And you can see, if you're watching on our stream right now, the main cover that's over my right shoulder is, I believe, by Matteo Santaculo. And I would imagine Marcelo Costa does the colors, because it looks like it's colors from the interiors. There is an impressive like finish to it as well. Not to say that gritty isn't impressive, but there's just a different, texture to it. And but there's still like the action that's involved in all of this, Joe, is like, to me, feels like, okay, like we're trying to build on some of the stuff from the older comics and then take that, like some viciousness, and involve that in this story.
Nice.
Yeah.
I've tried reading some Ninja Turtle stuff. I tried, when Jenica was introduced. Goo sent us something that I have that I want to read that looks really good. This sounds fantastic. Because I think there's a lot you can do with Shredder. I think
I'd like more of Shredder. Like,
I don't think he has to be a one-note character. I think you can really create some depth there, and sort of take him to a couple different, to a couple different levels. But this sounds really good.
So I actually, right to my left of me, I have a lot of my figures in comics, and one of my figures that I have that I absolutely love is the Shredder from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers TMNT mashup. And he was the Green Ranger. That's, of course, written by friend of the show, Ryan Parrott, and they got a second volume of that coming. I mean, anytime you see Shredder thrown in the mix, like he's always awesome. And look, obviously for TMNT, you can't just have it be Shredder all the time. You have other villains, you got to throw them in the mix. Totally get it. Create new characters, cool. But man, like I would like more solo Shredder stuff, and I don't know if I'm like in the minority on that front, but if IDW decided to do that, like I'm gonna give more of that a look. And even I don't know about even probably older stuff with him and Oroku Saki too, going into their past. I'm sure there's some other interesting stuff too.
Yeah, because you could really get gritty with his origin, or there's some depth there. You could put some flavor. You could put some meat on that bone. Not just make him one note. So you were busting my nuts a few minutes ago. I sent you a picture. I don't know if you could take that picture and pop it up on the screen for StreamYard. It might be too last minute. But what I sent you was a picture of a Ninja Turtle I had as a kid. Surfer Michelangelo. I can't remember the exact name of it. But they've been selling this at Newbury Comics for like $70. So this is oh shoot, I can't remember the name of the company there. That
is it Hasbro or Mattel?
No, let me pull it up here.
I have no clue. But I just want to correct myself real quick. I think I said Oroku Saki and Shredder, the same person. I would say Hamato Yoshi, which is what Splinter's actual name is. So I apologize for that little indiscretion there. But anyways, I don't know who the publisher is, or who the company is for.
Yeah, it's from Entertainment Earth. This is where Goo gets a lot of his figures here, and but they've been selling it at Newbury Comics for like $70, and the website had it on sale for $38. So I had to grab it. So like I've been in a very Ninja Turtle nostalgic mode because Swaggins has been really into Ninja Turtles lately.
Watching that's right.
Cartoons.
Yep.
And so like every now and then I'll go down like a YouTube rabbit hole where I'll just type in TMNT action figures, and I just like, oh, I had that one. Because like I would have sworn to shit that I was a Michelangelo Raphael guy. When I go back and look at all my action figures, they were predominantly Donatello.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's kind of nuts.
I've got the big guy, like the 2-foot guy, that's Donatello, and I just had a ton. So, but credit to Goo, he's always on the lookout for TMNT, statues and sending them my way. And at that price, Nicholas, I couldn't pass that up.
Of course not. And I'm trying to pull up the Michelangelo thing, but it's
don't worry about
it being too much of a pain in the butt. But it is. But yeah, you can find that very quickly if you do a quick Google to wonder what Joe's talking about. Surfer Michelangelo shirts that. By the way, the other character that I mentioned too, that's like
Ultimate Sewer Surfer Mike. Yeah,
there you go. There's also when I was talking about Shredder in his past stuff. He is the dragon incarnate, but then the dragon god incarnate. But then there's also Takeshi Tatsuo, who's also in the mixes. That is the founder of the Foot Clan as well. There's a whole like that. Like he enters the mix very quickly, and he really sets the tone for Shredder. And especially after the decision that he makes, leads to him winding up being there. But again, don't want to get too close to start spoiling stuff as much as the first issue. It's only a 5-issue series, so trying to be careful on what details are shared there. But if you like Shredder, like, I think they're just scratching the surface of some of the stuff that we can do here. Like you said, like, this is a character who doesn't need to be one note, can be a lot more dynamic, can delve into his past, and even more stuff with him in the future too. So absolutely love it. And again, if you want to, if you're always like, I want to get on TMNT, but there's just so much to read right now, and I don't know, like, this came out in 2019. You have volume 22 that comes before this, volume 23 that's after it, and I won't say more about how those all kind of intertwine, but they do. Then from there, you can move forward, and that can be your catch-up game. Instead of, maybe, I'm not saying don't go back and start from square one, but it's a lot easier to do that. And I know people want to start with number one, but sometimes it's just not realistic. But that is it for TMNT, Shredder in Hell. And that is it for us, unless you have something else that I missed in the course of things, Joe.
No, I've talked way too long in this episode, this issue already. We're looking at this 110.
Yeah,
I really.
Oh, come on!
I really bed people's ears today.
I needed to hear every second of it. I was listening. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. Especially when you got to the part about where Joe Bob ended up marrying Catwoman. That was the best part. But anyways, we are going to be getting back to Solicit next week, December. We told you guys we got a lot of fun stuff planned. Make sure you keep your peepers popped. Subscribe to the audio channel if you haven't already. And of course, you can still watch us on any of our streams too. Figure out that Twitter thing in the course of the show. Somehow, Joe, we were locked out of our account, which I will tell you more about later. But until next week, stay sexy.
You know it.